Okay.
Don't worry, you'll get some good stuff in the later sessions. This is practice.
So it started recording. I think I'll just keep the audio. We'll see how it goes. All right. So, what was the question again? Can you just repeat that one?
So, which of the later courses did you find the most valuable?
Okay. Yeah. So, as I said, like what I find interesting is kind of separate from what is valuable long term. Sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. Um, so what is valuable, what I found most valuable for me is a certain approach to learning a topic and not necessarily the topic itself. And specifically, kind of being patient about building my mental models. That's what I found most valuable by far. Like for me, I've developed a certain kind of intuition when I'm learning regarding the topics that I'm learning, how well I've built my mental model and where I am in that process and how to move through it until my mental model is really solid, it's detailed, it's accurate, and it's set in memory, and I've practiced using it. Like effectively, I've gone through the stages where at the beginning it took like most of my cognitive load, or it took high cognitive load. So most of my working memory was used just to take all the different pieces of the topic and try and integrate them uh, to form my mental model. So a lot of mental energy at the start, a lot of mental energy I'm spending, and then basically because I was patient and went through the right process, by the end, my mental model is kind of assimilated. It's more unconscious for me to interact with it or apply it in the world, uh, such that it takes up low cognitive load. Like if it before it was like 4 squares, now it's like 1 square, like of the total space. Uh, and I think that's the key valuable thing. And then the topics themselves, yes, some will be more important than others. I'd say with launch school, pretty much everything they teach is like like at least the selection of concepts, everything is really valuable. I'd say. Um, yeah, though at least for me, some like in JS 215, I felt really confident already with the different kinds of um, like in that course they talk about uh, forget like kind of regular ways of solving problems, like different ways of processing data, like list processing, uh, object manipulation, uh, and doing that in JavaScript, and also in terms of like interpretive problem solving, like solving a problem that doesn't necessarily have like the full requirements specified, and you need to sort of infer and ask the interviewer to clarify things so that you can solve the right problem. Um, yeah, for that, like I felt a lot of my mental models were solid since before starting law school, I'd done JavaScript for like 8 months. So it was just like starting it again on the front end after doing Ruby. It was easier for me to pick up and get into the groove again. So uh, I found it less valuable for me to go deep there and do all the exercise, so to speak, um, because my mental model has already reached kind of its like full like integration. So there was no point in practicing further, even though the concept, the skills themselves, and proficiencies themselves were like key. Like, you need to have that solid, like down solid. It's just such a powerful tool, um, and the other things there as well. Uh, does that answer your question? Do you have follow-up questions, Eamon?
Uh, yeah, no, that answers it very well. A slight follow-up question. I don't want to steal from the others, but so you've gone through a lot of different courses. Would you say that you've mastered all of the courses to the same level, or are there some, because there's different levels of mastery? Would you say that you've mastered them all to the same level, or there's some that you've mastered more than others?
For me, a constant thing that's bugging me is that I think 175 and 185 courses, I didn't do them properly, mostly because I, I have strong opinions about how I wanted to build software, so I didn't want to do how they were doing it. And I'm still like in the back of my mind, it's like I just don't feel confident with writing like web servers that serve pages yet, or API servers. And so that's definitely something where I'm like, that's a really key thing. Like for a web developer, it's a key like mental model. I need
Hmm.
to go back and do it solid. But I feel it was just not the time where it fit then, and soon it will be a real fit, and I'll go hard.
Very good.
Um, David, Michael, Chris, do you want to pitch in your questions? Anything and everything. Hi, Michael.
Hey, hi, how you doing? How you doing?
Hey.
Very good. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. Um, I've got maybe a question. I remember at the start, I think you had a job, and then later on in the course, I think you did full time study or you had more time for study. I was just wondering if you could maybe just talk about the differences you experienced and maybe if some things that would help like part time people to study, or like was your study like deeply improved by going full time, or just discussion about the difference between kind of part like working with like studying with a job and kind of more full time study. Thanks.
Okay. Well, first I want to clarify that for the full time I've been at law school, I've been doing it full time.
Oh, sorry. That's
Yeah. I except I did start learning web development part time. So in fact, about 2 years ago in August, uh, basically it's the first time I was talking to someone and they gave me an idea to learn web development. Then they sent me an email like with the web developer roadmap with a bunch of stuff you can learn. And I just started like looking around online and started learning. And so I think I spent about 2 months before falling in love with it and just quitting my job. And making my dad really angry. He's like, "Oh, you just got a job." Oh. He got over it. And yeah, it was hard for a while. Like for me, financially, like I quit my job, so I had to make money uh, somehow else. So I aimed like to do websites. So like in terms of like study quality at then, like the things, let's say if my goal then was to become a software engineer, I wouldn't have made the right choice. I think I should have just continued with my job, saved up money, and kept studying steadily. But at the time, I just sort of wanted to be like engaged with it as much as can. But the result is I had to spend a lot of time learning how to like do business, how to sell to clients, how to do all the things so that a website isn't just a website but something valuable to a small business. So there's all the marketing aspects. So I had to learn things in order to make money and put in all that effort. And I feel if my goal was I wanted to study software engineering, then that wouldn't have been helpful, right? So I think if you want to quit your job to study full time, kind of like time it right so that you can't study full time until you're done, right? Because if you like study, like drop your job and then study, and then you run out of money, and then you're back to like spending more effort probably to make the money you need to live. Um, and like your job in the first place could have been a good space where you have like a consistent, like kind of regular thing. That's the most important thing. Like whether you're doing full time or part time, can you have a kind of regular routine where you're making a little progress and be continue to be motivated and not get discouraged. I think for a lot of people they could, like, knowing what I know now about like routines and energy, how to manage energy so I have the energy like to study basically the whole day, or build projects the whole day. I think I could have easily applied that to be really productive even while working a full-time job. Because yeah, like when I was working that job at the factory, like I would do things that would basically compromise my energy, and the result would be like the next day or the other day, like it would be difficult to study. Like basically, I wouldn't have my sleep really like airtight, like the routine. That's one key thing. I don't want to get into all the details of it, but I think there's a lot of people can do to get more time, kind of more energy, more time to make progress when they have a full-time job. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah. No, it was perfect. Thank you.
Perfect.
If the others don't have a question, you mentioned their motivation. I was wondering roughly how long did it take you, and was there any point in the curriculum where you kind of struggled a bit more than others, maybe with motivation or just burnout?
Yeah, I've had struggles with motivation, but not burnout. I had that before doing law school, and that's kind of like where kind of a moment where I started looking around for something like law school and found it. But I haven't had it while doing the curriculum. So I've been doing the core. I started a 101 course. So I think I spent like 3 months in prep, sort of preparing for all kinds of things, like financially, uh, getting my family's backing and everything, just really getting ready. And then it's been about a year since I started the curriculum. Um, so wait, I kind of lost my trail of thought. Yeah, motivation. Yeah, I've had problems with motivation, especially like in 170, um, like and 175. Um, so 170 was difficult because basically for me to be satisfied with my mental models of networking, I had to go really nitty gritty, like a bit like down the rabbit hole outside of like the scope of, and so it just took like a lot of effort. Now I'm really satisfied with like where my understanding of networking stands. So I felt that finally it worked out, but like it was really like meticulous for a long time. I think I spent 2 months on that course, just really kind of covering so many things in depth. And yeah, that was just hard mentally for me. Like I hadn't done that kind of really detailed study. Like I was learning about uh, I think the differences between different Ethernet protocols, why there's Ethernet 2, and then the other Ethernet I forgot now the modern one. Like to me, I just wanted to make sense of like why this, why that, and networking you can ask why like 5, 10 layers deep if you want. I would go like 3 layers before being like, okay, this is good enough. um, yeah, so that was hard, and then also 175 was hard, and 185 was hard because basically I wanted to just start building my own things and not do the curriculum. uh, so I actually ended up like talking to Chris about it, like sending a message. Oh, like I have like this idea, this idea, this idea. I want to do it. I'll be gone, or something like that. And then he well, we had a chat, and he advised me like just to keep going, basically, like how will I build like some product if I don't know how to do databases yet, or like I'm not really good with JavaScript yet. Uh, and I was like, okay. So I kept going then. Yeah, those are the 2 years. But otherwise, I feel I do a lot of things for me to maintain motivation. Like it's not something I leave it up to the muses. It's like part of my routine. I have a routine in the morning. I have a routine in the evening. All like bookends to my day that I'm sort of trying to condition my mind and basically to control the meaning, or like I find that motivation is in big part how meaningful you perceive something to be, right? If it's not meaningful, then you won't lift a finger to do it. But if it's really meaningful, like you can be like a demon possessed. Like you can go that far. So how meaningful is it for you? And meaning in big part is kind of the context in which you see something. Uh, right? There's the something, and then there's the context that shapes its meaning. Um, and let me think about this a bit. The context. So you wanna be deliberate about the context you give to things, and I think one of the ways like I do that the most um, is kind of thinking about the purpose or the end in a way. So I think in my presentation, I don't know if you've heard about it, but I did a presentation at Launch School. You see on the YouTube channel about like study routines. Um, and I talked about journaling and logotherapy a bit. So logotherapy is this system of psychotherapy developed by Viktor Frankl, and it's hmm, I'm trying to clarify like in my mind what it is. Um, Basically, the way it's focused on how to kind of widen people's uh, perception of different meanings or the possible meanings in their life so that they can find a meaning that sustains them and sustains their life. Uh, and like Viktor Frankl kind of developed this theory, or no, this theory is informed by his experience surviving uh, the Holocaust. He was interned in a concentration camp. So he saw how uh, different people there like despaired since they no longer saw meaning in their life. Uh, they would say, like I remember a chapter, like the the despairing men would say, "I have no longer anything to expect from life." Uh, so he thought that, oh, like what to say to these men? Uh, what what can you do? And I think the follow up to that, he said like we had to teach the despairing men not to uh, not to focus on what they expect from life, but what life expects from them. Um, so yeah, there's this idea of expectation, and really, so his key insight is that people need like some future thing that demands their that demands something from them. Like the inmates in the camp there that had maybe family members that they wanted to go back to. Like they would think about, oh, like I need to find, I need to be there for my daughter. She might be somewhere, or my uncle I care about, whoever might have survived, or for him, what sustained him. He had this like whole uh, like theory kind of masterwork. His life's work was unpublished, and he wanted it like he was the only one who could do it. So creating some kind of, or becoming aware of a possible meaning where it's not what you expect from life that matters, but what life expects from you, what is necessary. So a situation that demands something from you, I feel that's like a powerful way to motivate yourself. And a way to create that is really to expect something in your future. There has to be something in your future that you need to meet. Like it's kind of like strength training in a way. Like you in strength training you have a resistance, right, that you push against, and that's how you grow stronger. With meaning and motivation, I feel the resistance is something in your future that asks something of you, that demands like something. If you can picture and you can feel that, then you'll be motivated. Uh, yeah.
That makes sense.
Uh, more questions?
I have
I
more.
really,
Sorry,
I'm
go on.
sorry, go ahead. No, you
No, I
finish.
was going to say I have more, but I want to let the others ask. So go.
I really like the discussion so far, but I also have like some questions about very practical things, like just like in the front end portion of the Ruby track.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any like things, like topics or certain courses that you struggled with, like just with learning the topics? And was there anything that was helpful to you when you were struggling?
I think the main thing for me that I struggled with was in Ruby 101, 109, just getting used to the way of studying that logical demands, and also the rigor in like uh, precise language. Yeah, I think that like in the whole curriculum, that was the most difficult thing for me. Preparing for the Ruby 109 written assessment and getting used to writing just clear answers, concise answers, uh, with precise language. That took a ton of practice for me, and it was very unpleasant. uh, how I got over that? Um, hmm. First, let me address the part of like the studying and kind of the meticulousness of kind of learning the curriculum. How I got used to that. Hmm. I'm I think part of it is that I took care of my sleep, so it's kind of easy to do that focus you need to study in that detail, right? I took care of my energy and my health, and that I think helped just me to show up and put in the effort again and again, and like part of it is my brain just adapted to that kind of work, that kind of studying, uh, and hmm, and I think also during the prep course and the beginning of the curriculum, I spent a lot of time learning about learning and kind of understanding kind of the different tools I have to shape my learning or kind of my proficiency, my understanding, and also understanding myself, what works for me, what doesn't, as far as studying methods that motivate me or not. Um, yeah, so I think like a combination of just taking care of myself and learning about learning how I learn and applying that allowed me to cross that bridge into the kind of rigorous uh, studying launch school requires if you want to succeed. Um, and for the writing, um, hmm, yeah, I think it's kind of a similar thing. Like I slept well enough so I could do that hard stuff, even though it made me cringe. Like really, like what I did for preparing for the 109 written assessment was I created like a page in my editor with like comments for questions I made up about different concepts um, in the curriculum, and I'll just answer them on a timer. I know like, oh, for the exam, if I do like 8 minutes, like I should keep a pace of about 8 minutes per question average if I want to complete it on time. So at first it would take me maybe 20-30 minutes to answer a single question. And I just kept doing more and more questions. I kept clarifying, getting used to the precision of terms. Like at first, I had to think, oh, do I write it with these words or that words? Uh, and eventually that would just become unconscious, right? I know the words, ta ta ta, and I know the formatting, ta ta ta. And eventually, I would kind of write a question, maybe take me 20-30 minutes, and then I'd like rewrite it, try to make it clearer and clearer, and to have like something good. And eventually I got to a point where I could just write the question in a format that I've gotten used to, that goes like straight to the point and has the exact amount of detail needed. So, it's kind of like basically deliberate practice, uh, and really being aware of the different pieces there and creating a situation that's similar to what the like real situation taking the assessment is, and and using that situation to develop your proficiency and being aware of the different pieces there. And again, I think really important, like with sleep, energy, I couldn't have done that kind of frankly grueling work. That is how I experienced it. It was grueling. Like it sounds, for me, writing is just something that comes like difficult for me. I've been trying to like practice, but I just get so like hung up on the details. So it takes a while for me to kind of get over that and just be like, I know the details. The details are right. uh, does that answer your question, Chris? Besides that, I also want to add, like, again, LS 170, like having the mental model of networking where I felt confident in it. It took again a lot of rigor, but I feel after that, like everything's just been smooth sailing. Like I've been able to take assessments with far less kind of preparation than I did in 109, especially because now it's like speaking with precision, writing concisely to the point, answering the question clearly, uh, is just like unconscious to me. Uh, so for me, it's just like slotting in different concepts. Uh, yeah. Any more questions?
You mentioned a few times about 170 and 180. one of the things that it recommends there, well, it gives you ideas for small projects. But like you, I have a ton of ideas for projects. But when I finish 175, then I think, but it would be much better if I put in a database. And now, once I'm finished with the database, then I'm thinking, but of course, you need a good front end, and it would be better if it had, if you could manipulate the DOM, which you learn later in 230. So, did you do any little projects when you completed the backend, or do you think it's a better idea to wait until you have all of the concepts down and then make a proper project with all of the different things you've learned?
This is a tricky question, I think. So let me take the time to unpack that. First, no, I didn't take the time to do a side project in 175 and 185. I did do a couple side projects, I think around 130. There were one one Ruby gem that first it was like a refactoring of another gem, and then I kind of rebuilt it from scratch. Um, uh, Specifically, it was something that kind of read all the files in a Ruby kind of lib directory, like all the Ruby files, and then use transform it into a data structure that represents the source code. It's a common type of data structure called an abstract syntax tree. So it represents the syntax abstractly in a tree-like structure. And then I'd use that, manipulate that structure to kind of find, oh, what classes are there, what modules, what are their relationship, what methods, and then I use that information to create a diagram. So spent quite a bit of time on that, like, and I did it in stages. And yeah, I found it really fun. And like I said, in 175, I kind of wanted to do that again, but I chose not to finally, and just kept going. Um, yeah, as far as like keeping things until the end, I think that depends a lot on kind of factors particular to your situation. Uh, like it depends what your goals are, what you want. Um, in part, I think if you want to finish core uh, ASAP and get a job, or uh, finish core. No, sorry. If you want to finish core and then do capstone and get a job, and do that like as efficiently as possible, then I don't think really creating projects during core is necessary necessary. Um, you could do them like during a prep course, like do some practice. During the capstone prep phase. Um, if you want to not do capstone, but to uh, finish core then look for a job, then I think this is my personal opinion. I think it's better to do a bunch of practice projects throughout core. Why? Because something I've observed from different students who complete core is that, or are in the kind of later courses of core, is that still their level of confidence in their abilities are pretty low. Like they're not confident in themselves as far as like what they can do, uh, and they're not confident that they can solve problems and just create software independently. And I don't think that's because they can't. It's just because they haven't done it yet, right? They haven't done it, and they haven't had the chance to build up their confidence by just engaging with problems totally like with their own kind of agency and independence. Like they've done the problems that are presented at launch school. And also, there's a thing that happens when you start building projects. You start getting more and more ideas until you're just like flooded all the time with ideas. You have way more ideas that you can execute. But I've seen like articles by students that like have completed core and they're like not sure what to do. Like, what should I build? Send me a message. Like, I think that's just the result of not going to that process of gradually building things. They can be smaller, can be gradually bigger, and also going like developing the tacit knowledge. Like there's a lot of details that go into software development. Even a basic app takes quite a bit of stuff to get right. Um, so yeah, if you want to find a job after core, I would aim for practicing projects like throughout core and as you wish. Just understand that it will take you longer, but I feel at the end you'll have kind of richer understanding of kind of the details in actually building a project for yourself. Like there's a lot more than just the fundamental concepts, right? Planning a project and executing on it is very different from solving just one problem because there's so many more pieces involved. Like solving a problem is like, one piece within the project, right? So how do you keep track of all the pieces you need to solve? It takes time to, know how to use to do, just notes, project notes, and manage all that. Like I feel now I'm at the end of core and I got that down pretty good. There's still always more. Um, um, what else? Yeah, but I do want to note like my what I've gotten from launch school staff is that they encourage you strongly to just stick to core and continue with that. Um, because ultimately that's what pays dividends. I think that's what their point of view is. Um, though I'm just someone that wants to build things too, and kind of develop that side. Oh yeah, now I remember. That's the third thing I wanted to say. So if you want to like finish core and then capstone and get a sweet job ASAP, then yeah, keep it tight, lean ship and go fast. But if you want to finish core and then get a job, I think it's good to build up that tacit knowledge and that confidence in your ability to solve problems. Again, solving problems in a real world is very different from a pedagogic problem. A pedagogic problem is something, or like the kinds of problem we practice, you have that kind of thing, but it's broken down. It's like the smallest unit of a bigger problem, and the big problem is vague. No one gives you any instructions. No one tells you what to do. No one tells you where to go, how to plan things, how to show up every day. That's for you, and you'll have to do that if you want to create a project that like gets you hired, right? So I'd say better to build that gradually than just like sort of start from scratch uh, in at the end of core. And so that's one, two, and three. I think for me, none of that matters. None of what I just said matters. Like for me, the things I want to build, they'll bother me forever if I don't build them. So I better just do them now, so they don't keep bothering me. Uh, that's just it. Like some ideas I've been keeping in my head for a year, and just or no, yeah, more than a year. Like about a year and a half. There's one kind of project I want to do, and it's constantly there. It's constantly yelling, me, come, come help me. Like, and actually, just now, I'm like, after this call, like today, I'm gonna start getting serious about executing on it after a year and a half, right? But if I was like, oh no, let me do that after I get a job, no, like it'll just keep bothering me forever. So yeah, those are kind of the different sides to it that I see. That answers your question, Eamon?
Yeah, perfectly.
So I'll give just like a last round, a last call for questions. If not, I think it might be a good spot to wrap this up. Yeah.
Just one final question. Did you have any issues with like retention? You know, because I've seen Medium articles from other students saying we got to the end of the course and it was like we forgot quite a lot of the previous courses. I was just wondering, did you experience it or did you have any strategies for ensuring that you retained the information kind of long term, you know, and it just didn't fade away?
Hmm. Yeah, I do. And I've experienced forgetting, especially when, so I said for before starting law school for about 8 months to a year, I done a lot of JavaScript. And then I started law school and I did Ruby. uh, and basically I did that for quite a while before, and I did do some JavaScript in the background and so on. But I found I forgot a lot at the beginning. Uh, Okay, so let's say I started in August and then I use JavaScript again in January, uh, or December, or something like that. And I'd used it even a couple of times within that period. Uh, it's just that I saw that I wasn't fluent with the syntax, even though before I supposedly was. I was building things. So I didn't notice like, oh, I can forget a whole language. But that was different from launch school because I think when I first started learning, I didn't build my mental models in a similar way. Like I built them far more poorly, and I think that shows up. So the two main strategies I have for memory is solid mental models and then using flashcards, space repetition software. Um, so if your mental model is solid, then just everything becomes intuitive. Uh, like like you might not like, let's say there's like A, then B, then C. You might not remember C, but because your mental model is solid, it just makes sense that A, then B, then C. you know, uh, so I feel because of the level of rigor and of practice I've had for the concepts I've went through law school, I can just pick them up again in a snap. Uh, like let's say databases SQL. So uh, I haven't written much SQL since completing the course, since I haven't built like a backend app and kind of skimmed the 185 course. So I've forgotten some details, right? Like some quirks with the syntax, but I could like do the basic like CRUD operations, like select, insert, delete, update. I could do them, and then joins. And why? Because I have just a rock solid mental model of relational databases, tables, their relationships, foreign keys, primary keys. I just know that I can explain it to you in detail now. And I think part of that is that the first time I did it, I really eased into the mental model and kind of built it solid. I didn't kind of rush to maybe take the assessment or rush to sort of like study and consume information without practicing it, without getting the right feel for the how things work. Um, and then another aspect that supports that, I have a ton of flashcards for SQL. Um, right? So I'm very good at using flashcards. Like I've been using them for about 2 years now, like since I started studying, like so before launch school. And at first I sucked. At first I didn't quite get it, and I just read a ton of stuff. And over time, I got a feel for what I can do a flashcard core, how to make it, how dense to make it, how to cover like different aspects of recalling it, like the concept or the idea. Um, and so that side of things like helps me. Like occasionally I get an SQL flashcard about some detail of the language, and I don't remember. And in fact, I deleted. I don't need this, right? So you sometimes you make bad calls. Like I think just yesterday I gotta think, how do you like concatenate a string? What operator to concatenate a string in SQL? It's the OR operator in SQL for some historical reason, and I totally didn't remember that, and I don't care to remember actually, so I just deleted it. But other things like I just got it. That was a bit of a rambly answer, sorry. uh, but I hope that that covers it. So get good with the mental models. Like take your time, understand how it works. If you understand how it works, it means you can make a prediction, test that prediction, and see it correct, and do that consistently for all kinds of edge cases. That's the power of a mental model. You don't need to memorize all the possible things that can happen. You just understand how the concepts interact and what kind of results they produce. And you do that through practice, especially, and taking the time not just to consume the material, but to kind of interact with it in your mind, make predictions, correct them, understand why one of your predictions failed, um, expose yourself to different situations, different kinds of practice you can do with them. Uh, Take your time fully with that because you just come back if not, or if you don't come back, then you'll just be hampered forever by like you won't be able to use that concept or the abstraction to its fullest. That answers your question, Michael?
Yeah, no, that was perfect. No, thanks. That was like an excellent answer. I was wondering, could I just sneak one more question in? I was just wondering, like, how have you ever had to like deal with like doubt or kind of negativity or just like how you cope with kind of like negative feelings when you're going through the course, you know, because sometimes things are hard and maybe you can't find a bug or you've had a hard day and you just can't seem to take stuff in. So I was just wondering if you've experienced it, and how you cope with it, you know, if you have.
Mm-hmm. Um, First, I want to say before doing launch school, I had way more doubt and way more negative feelings about learning. Uh, in part because I didn't have like a clear path, like picturing. Like I knew after doing like websites for a while and like doing websites plus marketing for small businesses, I realized I really like the technical part, especially where it really required like full understanding the code. Like I had some situation where I had to do something, it was really difficult. I was like, that's why I enjoy. Uh, so I was like, okay, let's ditch this. And like my aim was okay, let become a software developer and get really good at that. And I mean, I had no clue how. Wait, I had no clue. Like the idea I had is like, let me get good enough and then get my foot in the door and then everything else will follow. That's what I had in mind. And of course, that's what launch code like says is not really a good strategy. Uh, for various reasons I won't get into. But once I saw the path, like launch school outline, for me it was just a radical change. It's like this is it. This is that's the result. This is the way there. Like what doubt is there to have? That was kind of my feeling. Another part, hmm, yeah, before that I had more negative feelings about learning because my expectations were all skewed, right? Read a bunch of articles about people learning in 8 months, landing jobs at Google or something like that. And I was like, am I doing something wrong? Is there something I'm missing somewhere? Am I going really slow? Right? Because before launch school, I already determined, oh yeah, I need to learn JavaScript very deeply. So I picked a book, Eloquent JavaScript. I thought, oh, this is good stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go through it very meticulously, very slowly, and just learn JavaScript very well. Uh, and I did that for like 4 months, or I had that goal for like 4 months, and I got like maybe to the third chapter. It's not like some crazy book. Like 3 chapters is like maybe one lesson in Java in law school. Like a lesson in law school is like, you know, so there's the course, then there's lessons, and then there's assignments, right? So just one lesson in law school is like 3 chapters there, and I did done that in 4 months. Why? Because I would start, it would be hard, and I'd be like, I'll stop, and I did something else, and then I came back, and then I saw again, and I would be kind of discouraged because I forgot stuff from last time, and then I keep going, and I would stop, and so I was progressing very slowly with that, and hmm, yeah, that was discouraging, and like every time I'd come there, like I'd come with the expectation, like, oh, I'll do this chapter like this week, this like I'll do it just in this amount of time, and that was totally the wrong mentality. So yeah, another change when I started launch school is that it's like I got permission to be patient and fully kind of just take the time to learn. Take the time that it takes to learn these concepts without notion of like how long am I taking, because that's discouraging. That you're trying to learn something hard, it doesn't work out that easily a lot of the time. Like it takes a lot of effort. It's kind of like I don't know, going through a swamp, a really boggy swamp. You might drown. Like you won't drown here literally, but like intellectually, you like you've already drowned and like revived like 5 times or something. Like if you've learned software development from knowing nothing about it. Um, so if you do during that, you're like, let me get through this boggy swamp like as fast as I can. If I don't do it by like next morning, I'm just like a wimp. If you like have that kind of self talk, like I think defeat is assured, right? Because how can you do this? Like if you want to go through a boggy swamp, like let's think about this. Like indeed, you need to be really careful about like where you step. You need to like take your time every step of the way, or else you just get lost or whatever, right? It's kind of like that. Like learning, every step of the way, you have to be deliberate and aware. And if you're rushing, like you're just gonna like fall flat on your face, and then you need to get back up and keep going. Um, so yeah, I think those two shit. So just the confidence, like this is a path and that's the result, and that's the result I want. I want it to be a software engineer. I want it to be really really good at this. That's where I want to go, and this is the path. Learn the fundamentals, and then also having the space to be patient, giving myself that before my expectations were skewed. What else? And there's another third like important thing as far as negative feelings. I think boredom, like when you're studying, kind of lack of interest, feeling that it's tedious or like just something you don't want to do, whatever step, whatever concept, whatever thing you are in the curriculum. So I felt that, and this is kind of radical advice, like that I'm gonna give you. But I'm gonna say like if you're bored, stop. Just stop. Don't learn if you're bored. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know if you hear. Like I have this ringing for my Pomodoro. Just ignore that. So yeah, if you're bored, if you feel it's tedious, if it's unpleasant, like I urge you to stop. Do not continue. Why? This is really important. What people have learned through their experience in the schooling system is that boredom is like best buddies with learning. They go together. Like if you go to school, you see the kids like they're bored, or at least past a certain age. They're definitely bored. They're disinterested, and they're trying to disengage as much as they can from the material. Why? Because not because children or people don't want to learn. It's because the brain has its mechanism for determining what information is valuable and what isn't. And if you're engaging with information that isn't valuable, your brain sends a strong signal that it isn't valuable and that you shouldn't do anything with it, right? It wants to conserve the energy. What's that strong signal? Boredom. Uh, I don't like this. This is meaningless, right? So if you, because of like conditioning from school, you want to be a good student, you sort of coerce yourself to continue despite the signal from your brain that this isn't valuable. What happens? You're creating an association of what you're learning with a negative feeling, and this negative meaning that maybe you don't get it or that it's boring, it's kind of like not interesting. And the more you do it, the more you strengthen that feedback loop. So you're kind of digging yourself in the hole. Uh, and another reason you shouldn't do it is that not only is it a signal that it's not valuable that your brain is giving you, but it's also a signal that it cannot learn it. You cannot learn something you're bored about. Why? Because of how learning works in the brain. Your brain, how does it determine what information is highly interesting, highly valuable, and what isn't? It has it develops a knowledge valuation network that's based on meaning, semanticness. How meaningful is this information? If I integrate it, what possibilities develop that I can use it meaningfully in my life, right? If it's if your brain like very quickly it'll use heuristics to determine this information is meaningful, is valuable, that's a signal that it can integrate it easily. The semantic distance from where you are now, like your current network of knowledge, the distance to it is near. Like the gap of meaning, the semantic gap is small. That means you can integrate it easily and learn it easily, and then practice it more. And it's kind of like a positive feedback loop. Like you learn it, and then there's pleasure, there's reward your brain gives you because it's meaningful, it values it, and it's also easy. And then that becomes a point to spread connect the network further. And also kind of because you picked it meaningfully, meaning means that you can take you can understand something new in terms of what you already know, such that you can use it. I'm not just making this up. Like I read the works of like no the works the blog post of a cognitive scientist. Her name is Efrat First. She's like focused on basically consulting schools and doing research on how we learn in the brain and how that applies to how we teach. Those are her words. Understanding, she calls it making meaning. What is making meaning? Making meaning is understanding something new in terms of what you already know, such that you can use it. Now, if I connect it back to the knowledge valuation network, your your brain is kind of using its heuristics can tell what information is already close to what you already know. It's like, let's say I know nothing about like the fashion scene in New York, like, or not, not I know very little. So if you tell me, oh, like this designer has like this new release of or I know so little. But if you told me that, what would my brain say? Oh, say, oh, meh, who's this designer? What's interesting about it, right? Why? Because not because fashion doesn't really interest other people, or isn't really interesting. There aren't a lot of like fascinating things there. It's because my current network of knowledge, there's a relatively large distance there, and I don't necessarily know how that information will integrate with what I know so that I can use it. Okay, fashion designer released this line. They're using like crypto something. Oh, that rings a bell. Like already, so you basically when you're bored, it's a signal. Your brain is like the semantic distance is large here. Basically, this is difficult to learn for me and to integrate in a useful way. So the answer isn't I'm just never gonna learn anything that's boring. The answer is take a step back and think, why is this boring? Why doesn't this click in a meaningful way? Like when launch school curriculum, things like sort of slot in with each other, like course after course, the concepts, right? Uh, so it's not like whatever you're learning is like way out of field necessarily. Maybe if you start the networking course and you've never known like anything about how the internet works before, it's kind of out of field a little bit. Or different things like that might have a bigger semantic gap. My advice to you is do not like be like grit your teeth. This is boring, and I'm just gonna muscle through it. The pain won't touch me. You're just conditioning your brain to hate learning, to hate that topic, just like school children, and basically to disengage with it completely. What you need to do is take a step back, slow down, and think of different paths from where you are now, your current network of knowledge, to that point. How do I make the connection meaningful? Um, so let's take a networking again, for example, because that's a point where there's a large semantic gap for many people, like who've been who didn't come from like technical backgrounds. Uh, why should I learn about networking? You know, it's like from their point of view, they might not know how valuable and important it is to a web developer. Now it's like, oh, networking, that's sweet. It's like the bread and butter. Like now with my current network of knowledge, it's really interesting. But when you start, you're like, what's all this? Like there's so much. It's kind of wild. Well, uh, your strategy might be, okay, let me see how I can make this meaningful. Maybe let me like start with something you know. Start with like your router. Like, let me open this router and like, what is a router? What is this thing? It gives me Wi-Fi in my house. How does it do that? Like that's a point, right? It's close to what you're already familiar with, like something in your house, and like adding things to that from that base can make the gap of meaning less, and it can feel more interesting. Like, this is what's so cool about this idea, is because basically you always have a sensor that's running all the time about how well you can learn something. Like, basically, how interested are you in it, right? You're taught to ignore this sensor so that you can like lap up whatever knowledge the teacher is is giving you. Uh, but consuming information is like not is kind of the least important part of learning. The most important part is semanticness, meaning start with something that's close to what you already know so that you can integrate it easily and then build from there and then take that path to the concept that's further on. Build the network up so that every step along the way, the semantic gap is little. Um, yeah, I could repeat myself a little bit, and I want to. Again, if you take this, so if you take this process, what happens? Basically, you're building up momentum. You're using a positive feedback loop. You can build up crazy velocity with your learning if you're constantly interested in it. Like, this goes into like more like in depth, like esoteric like learning stuff that I read on the internet. But basically, imagine like you're squeezing a lemon. You're trying to make lemonade, or yeah. Let me no. Wait, never mind. Not a lemon, an orange. Okay. So you're squeezing an orange, and you're trying to make orange juice. You want to make a lot of orange juice, a lot. What's the fastest way to make a lot of orange juice? Is it squeezing like uh like an orange and then squeezing it until every last drop comes out, or squeezing one like orange half, and then as soon as it starts flowing out, you switch to another orange, and then another orange, and then another orange. You're always squeezing on fully juicy oranges. So that's kind of like how learning feels like when you're engaging with the things that most interest you, that are the most meaningful, and you're building that meaning up with the smallest gaps. You're always squeezing juicy oranges, so there's lots flowing out. That's how you build up a lot of orange juice. But learning when you're bored is like squeezing on like some dry orange, like totally like no juice, and your brain, like, it's not only you're squeezing, but like it's painful. Like, there's needles in the orange. You're squeezing like this. It hurts and nothing's coming out. But this is what you're conditioned to do. Like, people do this or give this advice, or like study, grit your teeth like it's nothing, but it's not. You're going against your brain. So again, identify the point. Oh, I want to learn this concept. I need to learn this concept to take this assessment, like TCP. Uh, how does the TCP protocol work compared to UDP? Why should I care about that? How is that meaningful? That's so boring. Uh, well, try to open yourself to the possibilities, like the different possible meanings from where you are to that point. Maybe okay, I learned about the internet a little bit. I know, like, through this wire, like bits communicate. Okay, how do I kind of picture that better? The kind of communication. Okay, what kind of software uses TCP connections or UDP connections? Oh, this video stream uses UDP connections. Okay, uh, how does that work? Can I try? I don't know, sending a frame like an image with UDP to, I don't know, myself. Like I'll run two servers on my computers and send UDP datagrams back and forth. Like just be totally creative for it. Your brain is made for it. Like if you're thinking in terms of what's meaningful to you, you'll find ideas immediately. Like, and what's meaningful to you will be really different from uh, like the next person probably. Um, so that was a very long-winded answer, but I've been meaning to share about it for a long time. Yeah.
And those oranges were just so juicy, and you just had to grab those oranges.
So it's been an hour and 15 minutes. I'm not sure. Like that sounds like the stamina. Like the if the orange is still juicy, I can keep going.
No, thank you for that answer. It was like a brilliant answer, and I could just see the oranges, my fingers bleeding. but yeah, no, thank you.
Uh,
Any more questions? Ian, looks like
I've done all mine. Thank you.
okay.
That was very helpful, though. Thank you.
We'll end it here then. It was nice chatting with everyone. Hope this was helpful to you, and I hope the recording comes out good enough, at least the audio.
Thanks very much for organizing it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
thanks a lot.
Have a great
Yeah,
week.
thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.